Hi, everyone. For all those who've joined, just a quick hello. We are all set to begin the session, but we're just waiting for a few more people to join in and we'll start soon. Please hold tight till then, and we're really excited to share what's in store today. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. For all those who've joined us, thank you so much for coming in on a Saturday afternoon and taking out your time after school during your exams. We know that you have a lot of things going on and that this is one of those things. We're very excited to have you all here for the first knowledge session of the YLAC Social Action Incubator. For those of you who have registered with us, for those of you who have read a little bit about the competition, um, you know what you're in for, but I'll just give a quick introduction. The YLAC Social Action Incubator is a national level competition for young children like you from classes 8 to 12 to address social problems in their schools and communities. This is a pan-India competition where from September 15th to the 8th of October, we are welcoming applications from all over the country, from all schools, in teams of 3 to 6 members who by the process of shortlisting will reach one level after the other, and they will receive mentorship from experts in the fields of gender equality, economic equality, and diversity and inclusion to become the top 3 teams to receive funding and mentorship for the implementation of their project idea. All of you will be guided in the specific areas of your project designs, and this is the first step. So we've come together for the first knowledge session on gender equality. This session is being taken by the YP Foundation. Now, the YP Foundation is an organization that works with the young people to sorry, that works to facilitate young people in feminist rights-based leadership since 2002. This is a youth-led organization ensuring young people like all of us have the information, the capacity, and the opportunity to inform and lead development and implementation of programs and policies impacting lives and recognize the, and be recognized as skilled and aware leaders for social change. Today, we have Sagar, the programs director from the organization, taking the session. And let's roll in. Sagar, we're very excited to see what you have in store for us. Just a few things before we begin. All of you can write down the questions that you have in the chat box as comments. We will take those questions at every possible time. If not during the session, we will answer the questions at the end of the session. Please keep noting down your questions. Please keep interacting with us in the chat box. If you like something, do give us a thumbs up. If you have something to say, please share it, and we'll be more than happy to hear from you. Over to you, Sagar.
Hello, thank you, Trishti, for that introduction, and thanks to the YLAC team for inviting us to do this session. Just a very, very quick intro about me. As Trishti said, I work with the YP Foundation, and I use he and him pronouns. I have been working in the social sector, working with gender-related issues for over 6 years now, and specifically, my work has focused on gender equality related issues, but more specifically around issues of masculinities, violence, sexuality, and so on, and then many specific things within that. Today, I'll be making a small presentation. I know we're on a YouTube live situation, but we'll still try to see if we can make this a bit interactive for everybody. So I hope people are ready to type in or say some things through the chat and through some links that we will provide. So should we just jump into it? Yeah, let's go for it. I will be sharing my screen. Second. This can you just let me know if you can see it? All right. So today's topic is gender equality. What we will be doing in the next about 50 minutes is that we will be quickly going through what is gender and how do we understand this word. I know many of us have many different ways in which we've engaged with this word. So let's build some common understandings on that. And then we will talk a little bit more deeply about how do we see gender inequality around us, in which ways, in which spaces, and then we will also just have a quick conversation on how what can we do to actually achieve gender equality that we talk about quite often. So before we begin, what we are going to do is quickly do a little bit of a poll kind of activity where I would invite everyone watching to just either go to this website called menti.com and type in this 8-digit code, or scan the QR code on your screen, which will take you to this one question that you have to answer. The question will be about which film or which song that shows gender and gender inequality very clearly. So you can type in as many as many submissions as you want, as many names as you want. You can submit multiple times. There's no cap on it, and then we'll see what's coming out. So just think of films and songs. Use the link or the QR code on the screen, and we'll wait for a few seconds for people to start logging in before we show the results. Just in case somebody has missed the link, I'm putting it back on the screen. Please let us know in the chat if you're facing any difficulty in accessing this. Have some results coming in. Srishti, can you just tell me if you can see the results? Yeah, okay, great. So we can keep submitting for another 30 seconds maybe, and then let's see if you want some of these names to get bigger, you can type them in repeatedly. If that's something you've seen a lot of times, you think something's getting missed out, we can keep adding that. Gender stereotypes. Where do we, which films, which songs? I see Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, I see Highway, Batman, Disney movies altogether. Great. Kabir Singh, of course. Have not seen Soup Boys, but noting it down for myself. On this that a song, I'll definitely look up Soup Boys. Divangi, all movies. So just all movies have gender stereotypes, and that is just about to this. So many films have it. All right. Pritam Pyare, Chori, Chakki Chameli. Interesting. So now the what we're going to do in the next 10 minutes is we're going to stick to this thought on how we identified, say, stereotypes in the films and the songs we noticed, right? And we'll pause this activity here. Of course, side may if you want to keep adding very little dispel jaldi baat mein. But let's go back to the slides that we have. Uh, and we're going to look at gender today in a way that is, say, taught to us, that the way we see around us, and we'll keep identifying in this conversation on what is happening around us. So for now, what we will get into is what is gender and what is the society's version of gender that has been fed to us. Because gender can be defined in many different ways. Let's look at how society has been doing it for us. The first thing to remember about gender is that it is socially constructed. It is an idea that is handed down to us, which is something जो हमने हमारे आसपास के लोगों ने, the institutions around us have created for us. And that is an idea that divides people into a binary, and a binary being two sides, two boxes of man and woman, does not keep a lot of scope for anything beyond this binary, and just categorizes everybody from birth into these two categories. And then what it does with that distribution is that it distributes power unequally, that it expects both of these boxes to behave in a certain way, to perform certain roles, one to use power, one to submit to power. And that inequality is what we're going to be talking about. But this is something that has been in this construction by design. This is not something that just happened or that just sort of we now started. This has been in by design in the structures that we live in. And how it happens is that what it really does, this unequal distribution of power, is that it sets many kinds of norms around us. And those norms can look very different in different spaces, but some examples of that would be that you know, who does the work at home, who cooks in the house, who cleans the house, to then going forward to who goes out and earns money. Even at workplaces, what kind of work is given to which gender primarily, right? So we see in education and livelihoods ki STEM courses may we see still a fairly male dominated field where science, technology, engineering, mathematics are dominant, with a very high population of male students. And that creates a very difficult space for the female students, right, and to access or to stay in that space. Similarly, often we'll say that okay, women are starting to work now. Now women are actually allowed to work, quote unquote. But within that, also there is a power that whenever that allowance happens, what kind of work and education is allowed. So, for example, a lot of people who claim that they are progressive towards gender norms actually would say ki let the women of the house be school teachers, because they'll go in the morning, come back in the afternoon, and then they can do the work at home, while the same is not expected from the men, right? So there are many such norms that get formed around us, which have to be performed again and again for the power to stay unequal. And the last thing is stereotypes that we talked about, right? Stereotypes are a little different because these are more belief systems under the surface. Stereotypes are what oils the machinery of gender, or the society's version of gender, right? That stereotypes will be like men don't cry, or women don't know how to drive, and these kinds of very common statements that are very easy to believe and that are very easy to put into statements. If we keep repeating these things, they become truths, right? And then we start believing in them, and everybody around us start believing in them, and that's what makes sure that the power stays distributed unequally. So stereotypes are at the side where this system keeps getting repeated onto itself. I'll take a 10-second pause here, and what I will invite you all to do is to actually not look at these slides anymore, but we will switch to a video which we have made around gender. So whatever I just talked about, that in just better language and easier language and just well presented. So I hope you all can hear it. This should just give me a thumbs up if the audio is fine.
Right from the time of our birth, there are many things which are beyond our control and are pre-decided, and they go on to become a part of our identity. For instance, as soon as we are born, our identity of sex is assigned on the basis of our genitals. It's simple. A penis means male and a vagina means female. Congratulations, it's a boy. Now, suppose someone's physical anatomy or genitalia does not completely match those societal definitions. Our society would still try to force fit them into one of these categories. But this is just the beginning. Our society has its own set of expectations and structures, and to fit into that, they are further forced to fit into two boxes. These are boxes of gender. One box for a man or a boy, and the second one for a woman or a girl. It is important to understand that our sex is identified on the basis of our external genitalia, but our gender does not depend on that. As we grow older, the definitions of a man and a woman and the social norms associated with it start getting stricter and more rigid. For example, if you're a man, you would wear shirts and trousers or a kurta pajama. You would walk proudly with your chest out and sit with your legs spread comfortably. You would display your authority, have a moustache, earn money, and impress girls. Aren't you the most important person in the household? And if you happen to be a woman, it's all about colorful bangles, salwar suits, and hundreds of saris. Hey, no. Don't laugh too hard. Instead, be a little shy, reserved, and gentle. And yes, you would be taking care of your honor and dignity, won't you? Forget about studies or having a career. If you can cook well and take care of your family after your marriage, you should be just fine. And not to forget, all these marriage and romance business is allowed strictly with the opposite sex only. There will be no more discussions on this. These rules slowly become a part of every decision we make. And if we happen to think or feel otherwise, well, then there is definitely something wrong with us. And in spite of all this, if we choose to disagree and break out of these social structures, the society around us loses its stability and makes us feel as if doomsday would strike. For us, it is difficult to ignore the norms around gender identities of man and woman. And if we do so, then we have to face the horrors of loneliness, taunts, and abuse in every manner. Don't be surprised if these gatekeepers even opt for violence. There would be times when it would seem that perhaps it is better to adopt their customs than run away from society or to fight them. But on the other side of these threats and challenges, there exists a possibility of a completely different world. Can you imagine what a world without these rules would look like? Love, respect, empathy. A world where we would have the freedom to choose our clothes or colors as per our wish, not according to our gender. Where we would not have to hide or restrict our emotions or change our habits due to the fear of society, and where the responsibilities are not just about doing household chores or earning luxury, but our own happiness. Where we have the freedom to live our life by our choice and freedom. But this doesn't have to be just a make believe world. If we start making decisions in our personal lives as per our choices, not under the pressure of social norms, and if we encourage other people around us who are still scared or hesitant to exercise their freedom, perhaps then we can be an inch closer to making this dream a new reality. Yes, in real life, this is still a distant dream, and the walls set by the society are too strong and tall to reach. But it's up to us whether we want to break these boxes and walls or to let them be.
Okay, I hope that video made sense to people. I hope also the message at the end did evoke some hope. But before we get into how to make that world that we're imagining, this way we can actually live with love and respect, let's understand the problem a little bit deeper, right? And understand gender identities much more deeply. What we have not talked about so far is that the जो हमने बोला binary of gender of man and woman, if the world is not divided into identities, if we were to not do that, there are many other gender identities that we need to talk about. And transgender identities, while that is one word, is an umbrella term for many identities which do not conform to that gender box, right? And so, very simply speaking, a transgender person is a person who identifies with a gender different from the one assigned to them at birth, which means that if at birth a certain gender is assigned to a person, and the person says that I do not identify with that gender, I identify with a different gender, then that person identifies as a transgender person, right? And that term itself can have many different ways in which we articulate that identity. So, for example, a trans man is a man who is assigned a female gender at birth and has a gender identity of a man, right? And similarly, a trans woman is a woman who's assigned male gender at birth, but identifies as a woman, and that's the identity that they assert. So that's broadly what transgender identities are. So trans man, trans woman, just saying trans or transgender, non-binary people, many of these terms people identify with, that we just for the sake of discussion call trans people or transgender people as an umbrella word. And just to sort of understand the kinds of issues, the kinds of experiences trans folks also navigate in their day-to-day lives, we will be watching another video in some time. First, let's go to the next slide, but we will definitely be identifying the different ways in which gender operates, right? And this is the second part of today's discussion, which is where all do we see gender inequalities? That and that can range. So you see 5 points on the screen. I could not possibly fill this slide. There isn't enough space on this slide with how many different points I could write here. But these are just a few examples of how interpersonal relationships may we see gender when it comes to consent in relationships, when it comes to families, our parents, our siblings. We see different ways in which girls and boys are treated in the house, where a boy is told you have to be a certain way, a girl is told you have to be inside and be behave in a certain way, where in our interpersonal relationships consent is not taken or given, in that conversation that doesn't happen. All of those spaces we see gender playing its role, right? Similarly, when we go beyond interpersonal relationships, things start to get embedded into the structures within which we live. So, for example, education, if we look at college spaces, for example, hostels will always have curfew timings, but mostly we see that curfew timings, either in most campuses in our country, will have different timings for the men's hostel and the women's hostel, where the women's hostels will have an earlier curfew time, or in many cases men's hostel will not even have a curfew time, while women's hostel will have like an 8 o'clock or a 9 o'clock or a 7 o'clock curfew, right? And that impacts people, because one would ask that how is that impacting your education? Libraries, science labs, all kinds of facilities required for education in universities tend to stay open towards later in the night, right? But a lot of times female students are asked to go back to their hostels and not access them after hours, because they want to do that again kind of extra work, because they have a curfew, right? And which means that by design in that structure, male students have more access to the facilities and the educational avenues in that campus. So it's not just about who is getting access to education in terms of enrollment, which already is an issue, but also who can access what facilities on campuses is itself a very pervasive issue. Similarly for health clinics, right? So while with health and education, both of the one common thing is that in many rural to say tier 2 and tier 3 cities sometimes also, is that these facilities are not available closer to where people live. And in cases of young women and girls, what happens is that because protectionist attitudes towards them, people often say for their safety they're not allowed to go far from home or go outside their homes. But if schools are 50 kilometers away, how will the girl ever be allowed to go to a school, right? Similarly with health clinics, uh, health facilities sometimes are not available, often are actually not available around where people live immediately, with the kind of services and the quality services people need are not available. And similarly, if we look at even health research, a lot of times new medicines, new vaccinations that are developed and researched keeping the male body in mind, and then later we find out it had side effects on the female body, and many different hormonal issues start happening, or some side effects get seen, health deteriorates, and then people realize, okay, we did not do the research keeping everybody in mind. Historically, medical research has had that gap and continues to have that gap. Yeah, so similarly, public spaces, how are toilets formed, how are washrooms available? I know we keep talking about toilets nowadays a lot, that we need to build more toilets, but even in that, when we speak about the binary, how many times do we actually see toilets beyond the binary of man and woman or king or queen, and what newer terms people are coming up with in different restaurants and different hotels and malls? But every time it's in the binary, right? So for a lot of transgender people to be able to access many of these services, service providers, facilities, infrastructure, everything is designed in that binary. And that makes accessing any of these a big barrier to transgender people also. And we're all familiar with street harassment, I'm sure, harassment in buses and trains, etc. All of those issues do permeate this. And media, again, advertisements, the way we show masculinity and femininity in advertisements. I think we've all seen these sari ads of Dar ke aage jeet hai, and showing women selling washing powders. Even when they adapt to the more, say, quote unquote, modern clothing of women, there's still women doing housework, right? And Fair and Lovely became Glow and Lovely, but it was still skin lightening and so on. I will now quickly, what I will do is switch on another video. Like we said about public places, I do want to show one quick video, which is a documentary called Please Mind the Gap. It's about a trans man who is talking about his journey of being in the Delhi metro. So it's just a 2.5 minute maximum clip. This is a 15-minute, 20-minute film, out of which we'll just be watching 2 minutes. Please do watch this whole film later. I would love it if you all watch it and share your thoughts on it. But for now, we'll just be watching these 2 minutes.
मैं ना एक बारी वहाँ से लक्ष्मीनगर से चढ़ा था, तो 2 हरियाणा के बंदे चढ़े थे वहाँ पे, तो मैं बैग आगे लेके खड़ा हुआ था, तो
जैसे ही मैं चढ़ा तो वो भी एकदम से मेरे साथ में चढ़े। जैसे उन्होंने एंट्री की तो एक बंदा उससे दूसरे से पूछता है लड़का है लड़की है, ठीक है, तो उसने बहुत गंदा सिलेक्शन किया। मैं वो वर्डिंग यूज़ करना चाहूँगा तो उसने डायरेक्ट बोला कि आगे हाथ मार के देख क्या है, पता चल जाएगा। पासनगर से जा रहा था आनंद विहार, तो बहुत गिने चुने लोग थे वहाँ पे, तो मैं वहाँ पे खड़ा हुआ था, देख रहा था कि ये लोग कैसे चेक कर रहे हैं। मुझे ऐसा फील तभी हुआ था क्योंकि मैं उसके साथ था तब, इससे पहले मैंने कभी फील नहीं किया इस चीज़ को। अब मैं उसके साथ में हूँ और लेडीज़ वाले में जाऊँगा तो बड़ा अजीब सा लगेगा, तो इसलिए जब मैं बाहर खड़ा हो गया वो कहने लगी क्या कर रहे हो, मैंने कहा कुछ नहीं, रुको अभी चलता हूँ। खड़ा था मैं तो चेक कर रहा था, तो वो पहला चेक कर रहा था, पहले मैंने देखा कि ऐसे यूँ करके करता है चेक। कई बार मैंने ये चीज़ नोटिस की थी, एक ऐसे साइड में ऐसे करके करता है और एक ऐसे कमर पे हाथ लगा के यूँ ऐसे करके मशीन कर देता है। ठीक है कोई बात नहीं, मैंने वहाँ पे देखा तो वो ऐसे करके कर रहा था ऐसे। मैंने कहा ठीक है अब मैं जाता हूँ। अगर मैं और मेरे और सारे फ्रेंड्स हैं, कोई भी ट्रांसमैन वगैरह कोई भी है तो थोड़ा कंफर्टेबल होता है कि आप अगर लेडीज में जा रहे हो जेंट्स में जा रहे हो, कोई वो नहीं होती, एक साथ इकट्ठे सारे निकल जाते हैं। लेकिन अगर कोई लड़की साथ में होती, मेरी ही गर्लफ्रेंड हो या किसी की भी गर्लफ्रेंड हो, तो फिर कंफर्टेबल तो मतलब ही नहीं, जा ही नहीं सकते। अंदर से ऐसा लगता नहीं इंसल्ट हो जाएगी, अच्छा नहीं लग रहा, बुरा लगेगा, कैसा फील होगा, वो क्या सोचेगी, तो ये सारी चीज़ें बहुत ऑड सी लगती हैं, तो इसलिए थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो जाती है लड़कियों के साथ पहले।
Yeah, so just to sort of summarize what was happening in that video was that this was a story of a trans man who was struggling to access the metro, right? And when we talk about metro, in the case of Delhi, we have seen that the whole Delhi and the national capital region around has been connected by the metro in a way that every day people access it to go to colleges, to go to work, to meet families, to even to travel across cities, because all the major stations, bus stations, airports are connected with the metro, right? Which means this is, and in many ways it has been described as the lifeline of a working population in a city like Delhi, right? Where a trans man is talking about being scared of even entering that space because where the frisking happens, which security guard to go to, because that also has a male and a female line, becomes a matter of concern based on what will people around think. That my partner or my girlfriend think that I'm weird for going into a certain line? Will the security guard have a problem with me entering a certain line? The way the security guard is going to touch me and therefore have judgments about me or can harass me, all of those experiences about a transgender person are something that are not accounted for when we see talk about gender equality, right? So that becomes a very major problem, that जब हम बोलते हैं gender equality होनी चाहिए, gender equality किसके लिए, for whom the gender equality is being asked for, needs to be asked. And this was just the case of a trans man. Similarly, trans women would face many different issues, some similar, some very different issues. Non-binary folks would face different issues, and we all know that there are many issues that women also face generally in the metro, about harassment, about safety, especially at night, but also during the day and so forth, right? So these kinds of challenges also exist when we see different structures around us. There isn't much conversation happening in changing or redesigning these structures as well. And क्योंकि हम ads की बात कर रहे थे, so some of these advertisements are very obviously sexist, right? That they're showing certain genders ka expectation, how you look, what you do, how you behave. All of those expectations are set using mass media and social media, right? Then there are advertising campaigns which try to challenge gender stereotypes too. Like Gillette has done some kind of campaigns around being a man. where they've tried to talk about men being able to cry and it's okay to cry kind of messaging. Then there is another ad about, then there are some washing powder ads that have tried to change the narratives around gender stereotypes. So let's do one thing. Abhi ke liye, since we're talking about ads, we will take an ad break and watch one of those efforts that have happened.
फेवरेट मैं पूरन पोली बना रही हूँ तेरे भाई की फेवरेट तेरे रूम की क्या हालत बना रखी है इसने ना बस पूछ मत हाँ तू बता रही हो सुबह सुबह कैसे फोन किया ऑफिस नहीं गई क्या जॉब छोड़ दिया मतलब अरे ऐसे कैसे कितनी तरक्की हुई थी तुम्हारी ये हम भी कितना प्राउड फील कर रहे थे अचानक ये जॉब छोड़ना प्रियो कैसे जॉब छोड़ रही है क्यों पर बेटा शादी के बाद घर के काम बढ़ जाते हैं लेकिन तू अकेली थोड़ी है आकाश में तो है तुम्हारे साथ वो घर के काम में तुम्हारी हेल्प कर सकता है ना अरे उसे घर का काम नहीं आता मतलब ऐसे कैसे नहीं आता नहीं आता होगा गलती हमारी है बेटियों को पैरों पे खड़ा होना सिखाते हैं लेकिन बेटों को हाथ बटाना नहीं सिखाते तो और एक बार सोच ले मैं रात को फोन करती हूँ क्या हुआ माँ क्या हुआ माँ गलती हो गई सुधार रही हूँ
ನನ್ನ ಹೆಸರು ನಮಿತಾ.
Yeah. So now let's take 1 or 2 minutes to unpack this kind of an ad where somebody has tried to say something positive, somebody's tried to change something, and it's a great message that gender inequality doesn't need to be addressed starting from, say, a very larger society where we'll change 1 crore log or 2 crore log together, but also an example that we can all start at home itself, right? Uh, but what happens very interestingly in this ad is that it talks about gender roles at home, it talks about who will do the work at home and how we need to teach the boys also to share the load, and that was the campaign that Ariel ran. But what they ended up doing also in the very well-meaning video is what we also consider that a swing and a miss, right? That they put the blame on the woman. That to say that it is mothers who have so far not been teaching their sons to do the housework. And there are two, three questions that got unanswered, that got left unanswered in this. Is that A, was there a father in the picture, and could the father have helped if this was a case of a mother and father in the household present? B, the question that gets missed is that what could have happened if the mother had from the beginning taught the son to actually do all the housework, right? What would have the people around the mother told the mother? And this is something that in this one case, I usually, because gender session, I usually talk about from personal experience when we're speaking of men only, is that so whenever I would show interest in doing housework, and I've learned that over the years, right? I've seen my mother being worried that other people in the house or our rest of the extended family will tell her, why is your son in the kitchen? Why is he helping you out in the kitchen? And for me, it was just an activity, like I'm just trying to have fun in the kitchen and trying to just go around the house doing things. But for her, that was the stress, right? That a lot of times the women in the house would not have actual agency to teach the sons, right? And that's the kind of norms that जो हमने शुरू में बोला था कि there are norms in the house. Those norms exist amongst all the people in the household, and not just one person can now start teaching and things will change. So it's a good start, but sometimes we also need to be careful on who we ask to do the change and who's responsible for the change, right? And who can actually face a lot of resistance when trying to change things. It's a bit more complicated sometimes than ads would make it sound. So I'll pause this point here and move forward. But the a larger point here is to start identifying where all do we see gender inequalities playing out, and it's very important to start identifying these things. So for example, we say हमें gender equality चाहिए. Where will we start? Will we start at the level of gender, or will we start at the level of wherever we see gender? So abhi tak we have seen some conversation in colleges, some conversation in schools and hospitals, family so far, right? And in public places. But within that or beyond that, use the Menti link again. And I will quickly first change the slide there, where if you can refresh the Menti link you had opened earlier, or use the same code on the screen, and go back and try to think of the different spaces, structures, कौन सी ऐसी जगहें हैं जहाँ पे we get to see gender equalities around us. So this is more from your personal experience. Let's see what people in this room have been experiencing or seeing around them. Drishti, can you just please check if we open the link, you can see the second question? I'm just need to check it out.
Sagar, we can't see the second link. It's not visible yet. So if you could just refresh it, I think that will work.
Has it
Yeah,
changed?
now we can see it.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can refresh now, I have changed the slide, and again, as many things you can think of, as many specific things you can think of, as broad as you can think. There's no right and wrong here. मैं पहली बता रहा हूँ, gender हर जगह है. You will see it everywhere, so every answer is correct. So let's see what's coming to mind. If you have pressed submit once, I think I've enabled a function of being able to press it again. So submit as many times. Park, yes. Oh my God. I wish we were all sitting together in a room. I would love to unpack some of this. Cycle shop. There is a story there, I can tell. Feel free to type out a small anecdote in the chat if you want to, in 2-3 lines, and what is the story behind one of these. Schools, class, home, yes, religious places. Very interesting.
Sagar, could we go back to the QR code once again? Some of our folks have not been able to access the code.
That is a good idea. There you go. Please use this again. Let's give it another minute max. So let's see what's coming on that slide. Is it okay if we switch? Oh, wow. So amazing. Home, a lot of people have written home. People have said cooking, cooking में बहुत होता है ये. One example on cooking I'd give is that a lot of times domestic household chores जो होते हैं उसमें cooking is always usually expected of women in the household. But the moment it becomes a profession, it's actually a male-dominated field, right? So professional chefs are primarily men. Look at all your master chefs, Australia, India, America, whatever, and it's dominated by the men. With very, very some sprinkled examples of women chefs who come in as guests. STEM, taking notes. Emotional support, oh goodness. Toys, the kind of toys we're given, bus stops, again, public spaces can be very intimidating for women, very male dominated. Maintaining relationships, again, a story there. We have a lot of subject streams, yes. Malls, we see a lot of gender in malls. The way malls have gendered not just washrooms but also brands, right? The way brands sort of gender us, the kind of clothes they make us wear, and the kind of spaces they have created for the different kinds of sections for men and women and kids and everything. It's very interesting to take note of that actually. Songs, of course. Okay, okay. Beauty standards, yes. Festivals and meals can be very gendered. Uh, who eats first, who eats last is always something at home, a very interesting thing to observe if you all are wondering इसमें क्या हो सकता है. But there's many ways to look at it, but that's a good way to start. Politics is definitely gendered. And kind of representation we have of women and trans people in politics is appalling, and that impacts the laws we get, right? So अब मैं ऐड करता हूँ इसमें कि is one thing we haven't thought about is laws. Our laws are also gendered. The way they treat people of different genders is very interesting to see. कि are there enough laws? Are there effective policies meant to address many of these structural problems? So we also get to see there what kind of representation women and trans people have in, say, courtrooms. So that becomes a very gendered. So the courts are very gendered. Yeah. Okay. So as I said, this link will stay active for some time. Keep adding it. Maybe at some point we can take a screenshot if we share back some resources. I'm sorry, I'm increasing your work, but we can also always share this back. So the link stays open. Thank you for making this interactive. We're moving towards the last section of this presentation, which is about कि अभी मतलब ठीक है, we understood gender inequality, but how do we achieve gender equality, right? And for this part, I'll just go back to the definition we have. We said society's definition, which if I have to now say do one thing, allow me 1 second to just, if I have to now name this definition, हम society's version बोले जा रहे हैं, but what this really is a patriarchal definition, right? This is what patriarchy wants us to believe gender is, that it is constructed by society. It is a binary, it distributes power unequally, it sets norms, and it creates stereotypes, right? And we're saying that if you want to understand how do we achieve gender equality, you have to find the answer within this problem itself. If this definition is the problem, the answer is right here. So when we say that it is socially created, we're saying that gender is something that can be created by us, that we can create our own definitions of what it means to be a man, to be a woman, to be a trans person, to be able to decide my own gender, to be able to say that I identify as a certain gender without sort of thinking about society has given me a gender, right? And that will be a way we sort of undo the binary of gender, which is the second point, right? We said कि gender binary में नहीं हो सकता. We can't have just these two categories and stuffing people into these. So we will have to break this binary. And for that, we'll have to change those definitions of what it means to be one gender. It can mean anything and it can be decided by myself. The third thing is we said that power gets distributed unequally. And to be able to undo that, we will have to decentralize power by sharing power with each other. And that's what we've been doing today, right? We've been identifying her situation में which kind of power rests with whom, and that's in relationships, right? So in a situation where there are two siblings, one is a boy, one is a girl, we know that in many cases boys are given certain kinds of extra freedoms. But between men also, between a son and a father who has power and how that power gets used, that question becomes a question of gendered power. That are we using power to impose on others, to do violence upon others, or are we using the power that we might have in any situation to share it with others, to make sure that other people are feeling safe and equal to us? And that's what decentralizing power really means. Similarly, when we said that patriarchal definitions set norms in society, gender norms ban jate hain, we're saying we'll have to challenge those norms every day. So that ad that we watched, कि चलो ठीक है अब से लड़के भी घर का काम करेंगे, that those kinds of norms will have to change in every household, in every school, in every health clinic, in every college, and all the spaces that you all listed, right? Those little norms will have to be challenged. They might not change overnight, but the moment we start challenging them, we will face resistance. That's why we need more people with us to do that. But we will also be able to start creating dents and scratches into the system. And the same thing for stereotypes, right? That if that is the oil for this machinery, can we start shattering those stereotypes every day? And those happen by speaking up. So when somebody says, men don't cry, can I have space to actually counter that kind of a stereotype? To make a man who's crying okay with it, to say that women can drive, because everybody's still stuck on that idea that women cannot drive, and we will never debate that question ever again, right? Or औरत ही औरत की दुश्मन होती है, but ultimately you look at the kind of domestic violence issues in our country, and that is a very different picture altogether. So stereotypes sort of are myths, are untruths that need to be unpacked, and वो काम हमें करना पड़ेगा. It is up to us to sort of start shattering some of those around us, right? So these scratches, these dents are how we will get to it. And towards the last part on, because I know this is also going to be something that you're going to hopefully be able to use to create the projects and the pitches that you're all going to make, and I hope you all do a fantastic job. I'm sure you will. I've just come up with just very broad ideas, and I'm just sort of launching this conversation, and in a minute handing over to the YLAC team, that there are many ways in which we can achieve it, right? So some people do ad campaigns, like we said, social media pe reels banate hain log. People are doing very homemade kind of content nowadays. You don't need big production anymore, so you don't need an aerial kind of budget to launch a campaign. People do reels for campaigning, and that reaches thousands and millions of people, right? But to say a positive message which does not sort of contradict these values and actually offers a change can be very useful too. Similarly, it doesn't have to be at that much scale. It can also start with our surroundings, where we have created spaces for our peer groups, our friend circles, to start having these conversations. Schools में clubs shuru karna to have talk about gender issues, do some kind of competitions or activities in school where we are just making sure that चाहे वो poster बना रहे हैं, चाहे वो story writing कर रहे हैं. So for example, we see these videos, right, where people are writing stories of progressive gender, of challenging gender norms. Can we write those stories? Can we create those cartoons? So many of those art-based things are also a good idea. It's a good idea to collectivize people around us. It's also a good idea to actually go around. So if I am one person, right, if I have 10 more people who think like me and I want to do something about it, can I go to the schools around in my area or in my city, or go to the public, say, toilets around me and in my city, and look at how accessible they are, what is the quality they have, are they accessible to trans people, are they accessible to women, किस बाथरूम पे ताला लगा हुआ है, किस बाथरूम पे लाइट लगी हुई है. There are many tools that also exist to do these kinds of audits, right? But to be able to say that my city does not have these many things, or my town does not have these facilities in place जहाँ लोग safely उसको use कर पाए, that becomes a very useful way to sort of generate conversation that can be changed specifically. So identification is important, collectivization is very important, and getting creative can be very important. So these things usually help us in being able to approach these issues. I'll pause now and over to maybe Drishti. If you want to add something to this list, or if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to take.
Thank you so much, Sagar. I think the session that you've taken has really put everything together for our participants, and I'm sure they're going to come up with a lot of new ideas, a lot of additions to this list, and they're going to come up with some very innovative projects. Now, at this time, would just like to urge all the viewers, if you have any questions, please post them on the live chat. We will go through all of them. We'll answer all your questions. We'll try to sort of keep the time in mind. It's almost 4 o'clock, so we can try and put all our questions at the earliest so that we get answers. In the middle, someone did actually mention in the comment box that a public space is where you notice gender inequality. So Sagar, do you have anything to say about that?
Definitely, and I think public places it's one of the most widest ways to identify different aspects, right? So, which are the spaces in public spaces where are very male dominated, right? Identifying those becomes very important, and the way we are using and designing those spaces can be very useful in making them accessible. So, one very common thing is ki the moment it's sundown, are there street lights? Because that's the most bare minimum. However, to say that streetlights will solve the problems of street sexual harassment, that is not true. But that is a bare minimum that people need to be able to start feeling safe, right? So public places are definitely an important side, and I think that if you're doing any activity where you're going to observe something in a way that you don't need permissions to get into, start with public spaces. There's 100 things to look at in how gender actually operates, and who is allowed where without actually saying you're not allowed there is a good question to keep in mind. Just ask yourself, would a woman or a trans person be able to walk into this space or that space safe and feel safe? And I think that will open up a very long list of things for you. I think that's all the time I have for that question. So those are some good questions to ask.
So what you said, Sagar, really got me thinking. I think empathy is the first step to anything, right? If I put myself in someone else's shoes, I will be able to think about what their problems are, what they're facing, what they may be going through, and maybe try, because that is what it needs, right? Just an attempt to begin change, to start a conversation, to, make something happen, to begin a revolution. And that is the aim that we are sort of keeping in with the YLAC Social Action Incubator. We do have one comment from one of our participants who says, my takeaway from the session is, are we using equality while talking of gender equality? And I don't know. I mean, of course, it is always equality when we are talking about gender equality, right? And I mean, it is about justice. It is about coming together for a cause and supporting each other when a need arises.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
and if I can take half a minute to address, maybe I see where the question is coming from. I'm not sure, but a lot of times you're asked that you're talking about gender equality, but you're not talking about all genders. You're not considering what men go through, and I think that is a good question that has an answer. While people always don't ask me that question to seek that answer, is that there are a lot of gendered issues that men go through, right? There are a lot of stereotypes also that we need to unpack to take away that unnecessary pressure from men on to be doing violence, to be performing a certain masculinity, and we need to change those definitions as well. It is also on to us to change what being masculine or being a man means to us, and also at the same time looking at the kind of violence men are facing from other powerful men, right? So when we talk about what is the violence that men are facing, it's actually a lot of structural and systemic violence that, for example, Dalit men in our country face every day, and that is an issue of gender and masculinity because, for example, a Dalit man in our country would be scared of keeping a mooch, right? Because we see every other day news articles about those kinds of atrocities happening because kisi ne mooch uga li, and people of a more dominant caste did not like that and straight up murdered that person. Not much legal action, not much follow up happens, but these are very identity based structural issues that are happening, and gender does play a role here, masculinity plays a role here, right? So we need to be mindful of, when we say equality, the issues are many, but we need to identify in which situation who has the power, because that's where sort of the issue really is, not sort of the surface but a little bit under it.
Absolutely, Sagar. And I think this is just the beginning of many conversations that we have on this issue. And there is one question regarding the program. So I'll just quickly take that. Yes, it is important for us to be part of a group when we are participating in the incubator. We would like, I mean, since that is the format, we would like you to urge maybe even just 2 more people to participate, to make a group with you, and tell one teacher from your school to help you with it. We are taking students in teams of 3 to 6 people. So you can be anywhere between a group of 3 to anywhere between a group of 6. Students who want to participate, it doesn't matter if you're all from different classes, but you all need to be from the same school. I hope that answers your question. And thank you so much, Sagar. I hope the ones who didn't ask any questions are doing a lot of thinking, and they will come back with a lot more for us. So we will be in touch. Just a quick round of information. We are also starting, we will also be having the economic equality and the diversity and inclusion sessions next week on the 23rd and 24th of September. The same time, please do register for these. The registration links will be live on our website, the YLAC website, from Monday onwards. For those of you who have not registered for the incubator, we would really love to see lots of applications coming in next week. The applications for round 1 are open till the 7th of October. So please do put in your best. Come up with your most innovative ideas, and we really look forward to seeing you all very soon. See you all on next Saturday. Thank you so much, Sagar, once again, and thank you to the YP Foundation for being part of this knowledge series with us. And we really hope to have more such interactions with you.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everyone for participating.